Right now, your brain is processing roughly 11 million bits of sensory information every single second.
Which is just a staggering number to even think about.
It really is. I mean, you have the temperature of the room you're in, the feeling of the clothes against your skin, the hum of a refrigerator in the
The
background.
traffic outside.
Exactly, the traffic.
Yeah.
And of course, the persistent, nagging awareness of all those notifications piling up on your devices. And out of those 11 million bits, you're only consciously aware of maybe like 40 or 50.
Right. But your nervous system is still processing the rest of it.
Yeah, it's a massive neurological burden. And when you look at how we try to recover from that absolute whirlwind of stimuli, we usually just, well, we throw more stimuli at.
Oh, absolutely. We scroll, we watch, we consume.
Right. But if we're looking for an actual physiological reset, the solution isn't some complex, expensive protocol. It is somewhat absurdly hot leaf water.
It does sound entirely reductive
Okay.
when you phrase it like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we spend our days operating what are essentially supercomputers inside our skulls.
We're constantly triaging threats and managing these really complex social dynamics. So the idea that stepping away to steep dried plant matter in boiling water can act as a profound psychological anchor, it seems almost too simple.
It really does. But welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are exploring the mechanics of tea time today.
And to be clear, we're not talking about the history of tea or, the agricultural differences between green and black tea.
No, not at all. We are looking at excerpts from a fascinating source called The Serenity of the Steep,
Yeah.
Finding Peace in Tea Time. And our mission today is to uncover the emotional and psychological architecture of the act itself.
Yes. Why this incredibly everyday routine acts as a necessary small break.
Right. So let me ask you, the listener, directly. When was the last time you took just 10 minutes of pure quiet during a chaotic day?
It's a tough question because, according to the source text, tea time is actually not just about drinking tea. It represents a deliberate, vital choice to slow down, to carve out a physical and mental space for rest, drawing a hard boundary in the middle of a chaotic environment. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand that boundary, we need to look at the specific emotional atmosphere this habit generates. The text points out 4 defining pillars. It feels warm, peaceful, comfortable, and quiet.
And those 4 adjectives are definitely not accidental. They represent a really stark contrast to the modern baseline.
Yeah, think about the high-speed nature of a typical busy day.
Right. A busy day is generally characterized by the exact opposite of those 4 states. The modern environment, especially the work environment, whether you are commuting to an office or managing a remote setup, is often cold.
Cold physically and emotionally, right.
Exactly. Literally cold, with aggressive air conditioning, and emotionally cold in terms of transactional interactions. It's chaotic rather than peaceful. It is deeply uncomfortable, characterized by sustained tension, awkward communications, rigid postures.
And it is incredibly loud.
So loud.
The digital noise alone is deafening. It's like standing on an airport tarmac, but instead of jet engines, it's Slack messages and emails.
Breaking news alerts, calendar reminders.
Yeah. Which puts the nervous system into a chronic state of low-grade sympathetic arousal. Your fight or flight system is just constantly humming in the background.
So when you consciously step away to experience an environment that is warm, peaceful, comfortable, and quiet, you are not just taking a break from tasks.
You're doing something much more active.
Right. You are administering an antidote to that sympathetic arousal. You are actively stepping out of a state of high alert and forcing your body into a state of sensory safety.
Which allows the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, to finally come online.
Precisely.
It reminds me of the architecture of survival horror video games.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right, because you spend the entire game managing scarce resources, dodging threats, and just operating in this state of high anxiety with this frantic, dissonant music playing.
Yes.
And then you walk through a specific door into a safe room, and the frantic music just instantly fades out.
A calm acoustic track starts playing.
Exactly. The lighting changes to something warm. There are no enemies. It's a space where you can literally just put the controller down and breathe. Engaging in this small tea break feels exactly like stepping into one of those safe rooms.
It's a brief, intentional cessation of action. It allows the baseline stress to drop before you have to go back out there.
But that raises a question. Does the comfort come from the tea itself, or the permission we give ourselves to stop moving?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, The mechanics of that safe room are exactly what we're talking about. The safe room doesn't progress the plot. It doesn't solve any of the external problems you're facing.
Right, its sole function is internal restoration.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to isolate the mechanism of the restoration, we have to look at the psychology of the routine. I'd say nobody just sits in a chair staring at a wall for 10 minutes.
No, definitely not, because sitting in a chair staring at a wall in the middle of a workday induces intense guilt.
Right. In a culture that equates constant motion with inherent value, stillness feels like a failure. You feel like you're wasting time.
But the tea serves as a vehicle, right? It grants you socially and personally sanctioned permission to pause.
Yes, if you are having tea, you are engaged in a recognized, valid activity. It's a prop that validates the pause.
It's a physical alibi. You can't answer the urgent email because your hands are occupied with the mug. It creates a socially acceptable boundary that you can literally hold in your hands.
But it goes deeper than just having an excuse to stop.
Mm.
There's a massive psychological component to the simple routine itself. The predictability is what actually generates that emotional comfort.
Which brings us to cognitive load.
Right. As we established, your brain is constantly evaluating novel information. Every email requires a decision. Every social interaction requires reading microexpressions.
And that requires a massive amount of metabolic energy in the prefrontal cortex. It's exhausting.
It really is.
Yeah.
Predictability, on the other hand, is the ultimate form of psychological safety. When you engage in a simple routine, the brain recognizes a familiar pattern. It knows exactly what step comes next.
But wait, I want to push back on the necessity of the routine being simple.
Okay, go ahead.
If the goal is deep emotional comfort and a complete neurological reset, wouldn't a more complex, dedicated relaxation exercise be better?
Like what?
Well, like if I'm stressed, a 45-minute guided meditation or a complex breathwork protocol seems like it would do a lot more heavy lifting than just throwing a tea bag in a mug. Why rely on something so basic?
That's a fair question,
Mm-hmm.
but it comes down to the difference between active effort and passive restoration. A complex relaxation exercise still requires a significant amount of executive function.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if you were doing a 45-minute meditation, you are actively managing your focus, you're evaluating whether you're doing it right, you're policing your own thoughts.
It essentially becomes another task on your to-do list.
Exactly. Another metric to succeed at or fail at. The simplicity of making tea is precisely why it works. It requires absolutely zero mental load.
But isn't there a danger in it being too simple? If a task is completely automated, like if I can do it with my eyes closed, my mind is going to wander.
Right.
And if I am in the middle of a stressful day, my mind isn't going to wander to a peaceful meadow. It's going to wander right back to the spreadsheet I was just working on.
Boredom can just be a vacuum that stress rushes in to fill.
Exactly.
But that only happens when a task lacks sensory engagement. If you are doing a simple task that requires no physical presence, stress absolutely rushes in. But the routine of making tea is not just a mental checklist.
It's highly tactile.
It's a multi-sensory sequence. It demands just enough physical presence to anchor you in the room without demanding the cognitive effort that causes fatigue.
So the routine bypasses the prefrontal cortex and relies on motor memory?
Yes, allowing the executive functioning centers to power down. You don't have to try to relax. The sensory feedback of the physical actions does the work for you.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's break down that sensory feedback, because this is where the mundane act of boiling water actually turns into applied neurology.
Let's do it.
The source text highlights 3 distinct sensory steps that act as grounding mechanisms: the sound of the water boiling, the smell of the tea, and the tactile sensation of holding the cup. Let's start with the auditory cue of the kettle.
The kettle is brilliant because it forces a pause that you just cannot negotiate with.
Right.
When you turn on a kettle, there is a distinct, slow buildup of sound. You hear the low rumble that gradually escalates into a hiss or a whistle. Psychologically, this acts as an auditory anchor.
It's an enforcement of patience in an environment where every other piece of technology we interact with is optimized for instant response. You click a link, it opens instantly.
You send a text, it arrives instantly.
Yeah, but the kettle refuses to be rushed. You just have to stand there.
And that forced pacing interrupts the momentum of your day. The sound acts as a transitional cue. It pulls your attention away from internal ruminations and forces you to track a process in the physical world.
It's like a localized analog white noise.
Exactly. And it signals to the brain that the transition from doing to being has begun.
But sound is only a fraction of the equation. The moment that water hits the boiling point and you open the tin, your olfactory system takes over. And smell is arguably the most aggressive override switch we have in the human brain.
Aggressive is definitely the right word. The olfactory bulb has a direct neural projection to the amygdala and the hippocampus.
Which are the centers for emotional processing and memory formation, right?
Yes. Unlike sight or sound, which are routed through the thalamus for processing and logical sorting before reaching the emotional centers, smell bypasses the logical brain entirely.
Wow, so if you've conditioned yourself to relax while drinking a specific tea, the moment that scent hits your receptors, your brain doesn't have time to consciously think, oh, I smell tea, I should probably try to relax now.
Right. It is entirely involuntary. The scent acts as a physiological trigger. It instantly signals the nervous system to initiate the relaxation response,
It's a learned association.
and highly individualized. The specific aromatic compounds, whether it's the earthy notes of a pure or the floral notes of a jasmine, become inextricably linked to the physiological state of safety you experience while drinking it.
So we have the auditory pacing forcing us to stop. We have the olfactory bypass triggering an immediate emotional memory of relaxation. And that leads to the final and I think most primitive step.
The tactile sensation of holding a warm cup.
Yes. This step taps into our evolutionary biology, doesn't it?
It really does. The somatosensory cortex processes temperature, and it is deeply intertwined with the insular cortex, which is involved in processing emotions and social connection.
So physical warmth translates directly, on a neurological level, into feelings of emotional warmth, safety, and trust.
Exactly.
You know, this makes me think of those classic, slightly unethical psychological experiments from the mid-20th century with the monkeys.
Oh, the Harlow experiments.
Yeah, where they gave infant monkeys a choice between a wire mother that provided food and a soft, warm cloth mother that provided no food. The monkeys overwhelmingly chose the physical comfort of the warm cloth over sustenance. We are just hardwired to associate physical warmth with safety and survival.
We are. When you wrap your hands around a warm mug, the physical sensation of heat mimics the primal feeling of being sheltered or being in proximity to a fire or another human being.
It actively lowers the body's defensive responses.
Right. The muscle tension in your shoulders naturally drops when your hands are warmed.
It's a physical countdown sequence for the nervous system. A 3-2-1 grounding technique built directly into your kitchen counter.
I love that framing.
3. Focus on the auditory rumble of the water, letting it drown out the internal monologue. 2. Inhale the scent of the leaves, letting the olfactory system bypass the stress response. 1. Hold the physical heat of the cup, anchoring the body in tactile safety. By the end of that sequence, you've successfully pulled yourself out of the digital chaos.
And landed back inside your own physical body. That sequence is a highly efficient way to regulate the nervous system. But its effectiveness is entirely dependent on when and how you deploy it.
The timing is critical.
Yes, this grounding technique is most powerful when it's applied at specific, high-stress transition points in our daily lives.
Let's talk about the most notorious transition point of the day,
Right.
the bridge between work and home.
Ah, yes.
The source provides a vivid real-life example here. Finishing work, making a cup of tea before doing absolutely anything else, and sitting quietly for 10 uninterrupted minutes to relax.
It is the architectural concept of the liminal space, applied to time management. We transition through numerous distinct roles in a single day, from professional to commuter to partner to parent.
The transition from work mode to rest mode is arguably the most fraught.
Without a doubt, if you do not create a deliberate buffer between those two states, they just bleed into one another. The tea routine serves as an emotional airlock between the high-pressure environment of the workday and the sanctuary of the evening.
Like a submarine. If you're in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean, you can't just throw the hatch open to the pressurized water outside. The pressure differential would be catastrophic.
You'd be crushed.
Right. You have to step into an airlock, seal the door behind you, let the pressure slowly equalize, and only then can you open the second door to the outside.
The human nervous system operates on a very similar principle of pressure. The kinetic energy you build up during an 8-hour workday, the adrenaline, the cortisol, the fast-paced decision-making, it doesn't just evaporate the second you close your laptop.
Or walk through your front door.
Exactly. If you walk in and immediately start cooking dinner, or start checking personal emails, or jump right into managing household logistics, you have bypassed the airlock entirely.
You're just taking the aggressive, problem-solving energy of the office and aiming it at your family or your personal life. You get emotional decompression sickness.
Precisely. You remain in a state of sympathetic dominance. The strict commitment to making the tea before anything else is non-negotiable if the airlock is going to function.
The sequence must be respected.
And the time limit is equally rigid. 10 minutes.
Okay, I have to challenge that 10-minute rule because, frankly, 10 minutes doesn't sound like nearly enough time to process an entire day of corporate chaos.
Right.
If I've just had a grueling 9-hour day back-to-back with putting out fires, 10 minutes of quiet feels like a drop in the ocean. How does sitting with a cup for such a microscopic fraction of the day actually accomplish anything?
Well, you're confusing processing with transitioning. The goal of the 10-minute airlock is not to solve the problems of the day, or even to deeply process the emotional toll of it.
Oh, okay, so what is it?
The goal is simply to shift gears. It takes roughly 10 to 15 minutes for the acute spike of adrenaline and noradrenaline in your bloodstream to begin to metabolize once the stressor is removed.
So if you keep moving, you keep producing those hormones.
Exactly. If you stop completely, anchor yourself with the sensory feedback of the tea, and remain still, you allow the physiological half-life of those acute stress hormones to expire. You aren't processing the day. You are physically changing the chemical state of your body so that you are capable of enjoying the evening.
So, listener, I have to ask you to visualize your own post-work routine for a second. When you log off your computer or when you walk through the front door, what is the very first thing you do? Are you stepping into the airlock and letting the pressure equalize?
Or are you rushing headlong into the next task?
Because if you're just rushing, you're carrying all that residual kinetic energy right into your living room. You're contaminating your rest space with your work stress.
And without that dedicated boundary, true relaxation in the evening becomes impossible because the body literally does not know the work is over.
But when you do utilize that 10-minute bridge, when you allow the pressure to equalize, it naturally opens the door to deeper, more restorative states of being.
Yes, once the immediate stress is shed, the mind is free to access memory, reflection, and shared connection.
Which brings us to the social and contextual power of the practice. The text notes that tea connects us to personal reflections and favorite memories, but it's also a remarkable vessel for shared peace.
Let's look at the dynamic of sharing tea with family members, because it alters the typical rules of social engagement. It creates a framework for parallel play in adult.
Parallel play.
Yeah. When we sit down with family members in a standard setting, there's an implicit demand for performance. There's an expectation of conversation, of catching up, discussing logistics.
Hashing out problems.
Right. It requires active social energy. Sharing a pot of tea subverts that expectation. The tea itself is the activity.
It's intimacy without the demand for performance. You don't have to entertain the other person. You can just sit in the same room, holding your respective warm cups, engaged in the shared sensory experience.
It allows for proximity and social buffering, which is the calming effect of being near trusted individuals without the intense cognitive pressure of maintaining a dialogue.
And social buffering is huge, right?
It's a key component of mammalian nervous system regulation. We regulate our nervous systems by co-regulating with others, but forced conversation can often disrupt that co-regulation if one party is exhausted. The shared ritual provides the physical proximity necessary for co-regulation, while the silence provides the cognitive rest.
And context amplifies that comfort even further. There is a very specific phenomenon mentioned in the text that we need to talk about, the specific comfort of tea on rainy days.
Ah, yes.
There is something almost universally profoundly satisfying about that specific combination. Why does bad weather make the tea feel exponentially better?
It is the contrast effect. It's deeply rooted in evolutionary psychology and prospect refuge theory.
Prospect refuge theory. Okay, break that down.
Basically, humans have an innate drive to seek environments that offer both a prospect, which is the ability to see outwards and gather information, and a refuge.
A safe and closed space protected from hazards.
Exactly.
So sitting by a window with a cup of tea while a storm rages outside is basically hitting the evolutionary jackpot.
You're hitting all the buttons at once. Experiencing external chaos, the cold, the rain, the wind, from a position of absolute internal safety heightens your conscious awareness of your own security.
Because the nervous system measures safety in relative terms.
Yes. The stark contrast between the hostile exterior environment and the warm, dry interior environment amplifies the neurological signal of peace. The comfort becomes tangible because the alternative is visibly playing out right in front of you.
Which perfectly frames the ultimate philosophical division in our daily beverage habits. The rhetorical question from the text, coffee or tea?
It's not just a matter of flavor preference.
No, it's a matter of energetic intention. The source implies tea provides a uniquely comforting energy rather than purely energizing. We use these two beverages as opposing tools.
They serve entirely different masters. Coffee is the beverage of industrialization.
Right.
It's what we consume to speed up, to artificially suppress the body's natural fatigue signals so we can meet the unrelenting demands of the busy day. It is fuel for the sympathetic nervous system.
It spikes cortisol.
Yes, it sharpens focus, but it also increases anxiety and physical tension.
While tea is the beverage of deceleration.
Right.
It's what we consume to intentionally slow down. Even caffeinated teas operate differently.
They do. The presence of L-theanine in tea alters the way the brain processes the caffeine.
L-theanine.
It's a fascinating amino acid. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and directly promotes the generation of alpha brainwaves, which are associated with a state of relaxed alertness.
Which are the same brainwaves produced during meditation.
Exactly. It binds to glutamate receptors, blocking the excitatory pathways that typically lead to the jittery, anxious feeling associated with a coffee crash.
So while coffee forces the brain into a state of hyperarousal, tea chemically nudges the brain into a state of calm clarity.
But beyond the chemical composition, the subjective comfort of a specific tea is entirely built on personal history. What makes a specific tea comforting varies wildly from person to person.
Yeah, for one person, it might be a strong black tea with milk because it triggers a deep-seated olfactory memory of their childhood kitchen.
And for someone else, it's a delicate chamomile because they've conditioned their body to recognize that specific aroma as the precursor to sleep.
The sensory triggers we discussed earlier, the smell, the warmth, those are just the hardware. The memories and associations are the software.
You program your own relaxation response over time. The more you use a specific routine to enter that 10-minute airlock, the stronger the neural pathway becomes.
And the faster the body drops into a state of peace the next time you put the kettle on.
Exactly.
It is a profound simplicity. We have moved from the cold, clinical reality of processing 11 million bits of data a second through the physical, multisensory countdown of boiling water, all the way to the deep evolutionary resonance of finding shelter in a storm.
Synthesizing this entire exploration, it becomes evident that engaging in this routine is not merely a quaint aesthetic choice or a luxury for those with spare time.
Right, it is a highly effective, neurologically sound tool for emotional regulation.
The physical steps ground us in the present moment, interrupting the cycle of chronic stress. The strict boundary of the 10-minute airlock protects the vital transition from labor to rest.
It's a necessary mechanism for maintaining psychological equilibrium in an environment that constantly demands our attention. There's a beautiful concluding thought from the text that perfectly encapsulates this entire journey. Sometimes peace can fit inside a small cup.
It's a great line.
You do not need to overhaul your entire life, quit your job, or move to the woods to find a moment of actual quiet. You just need the discipline to initiate the sequence. You need a cup, some hot water, and the willingness to just sit still for a few minutes.
It is the vital realization. And as we wrap up, there is a specific implication here that warrants your continued reflection. We're operating in an era where the physical boundaries between work and personal life have completely collapsed for many people.
Especially for those working from home.
Right. If you're working from home, the physical distance between your office and your sanctuary might just be the act of closing a laptop lid.
There's no commute to force a transition.
Precisely. In an environment devoid of geographical boundaries, behavioral boundaries, like the emotional airlock, become critical to your mental health.
So how are you consciously protecting that transition?
Are you utilizing that 10-minute quiet boundary to ensure you are actually stepping out of your workday? Or are you just carrying the unspent adrenaline from your desk directly to your couch?
If peace truly can fit inside a small cup, the ultimate question is whether you are giving yourself the absolute, unapologetic permission to actually sit down and hold it. That is the question to carry with you today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of quiet and the serenity of the steep. Take a hard look at your day, identify your transition point, and go put the kettle on. Take those 10 minutes. You have unequivocally earned them. We will see you on the next deep dive.